one to this November 2017 free project of the month. And Deidre already mentioned this, but we're going to be working on a crossbody bag. And in the October project of the month, and I don't know if anybody put that one together, we didn't do the live webinar, but this is a continuation from the October project. So if you're new to the software, and especially those of you that are new to maybe embroidery in the hoop, you might want to start off with the October project. It goes into a little more detail with some of the concepts, but it's the same thing. They're the same principles. But the October project that you see right here, it was a little bag. It was all done in the hoop, and you know, it's a cosmetic size bag. This bag that you see right here, the crossbody bag, it's a messenger size bag, and my finished size is actually 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall. And a couple of details that I'm going to point out: it has a pocket on the back. And in our day and age, when I look at any kind of a bag, I need a couple of things. I need it hands-free, which is wonderful with the crossbody. It's open in the front. This is a purse zipper, so when you go and you're looking for your supplies, you need to get a purse zipper. And a purse zipper actually opens from the center. It has two little zipper things, and it opens from the center. So I would recommend one of those. And the third thing that I look for in a bag is it's got to have a pocket on there that I can drop my cell phone and my keys into. And this bag fits all of that criteria, and you get to make it out of any fabric that you want. So at a glance, you want to make sure that you have downloaded your November free designs. Okay, you're going to find those on the myflorally.club. When you download that, your free design, this was from, this is the same collection that we used in the October project, but this is the 3D flower collection. I love this collection. You can have so much fun with it. And as I said, go back to the October webinar and watch that. I talk about this collection in a little bit more detail of what you can do with it. And then you want to make sure that you print your handout. The handout, the project this month, I don't think it's complicated, but there's a lot of steps. And so this handout ended up being 19 pages. And usually I try to keep my handouts between 10 and 12 pages. Okay, we're going to create a hoop in the bag. And it's not really an in the bag hoop, because to do it, to qualify for in the hoop, we would do everything in the hoop. We're going to do 3 hoopings. So we're going to hoop, we're going to make the back fabric for the bag, the back of the bag, the fabric for the pocket, and we're going to make the front of the bag. And then I did not put this together in my hoop. I took everything out, and then I stitched it with my machine. And there's a reason for that. When you get all of the fabric and the batting together, the bag becomes pretty thick. And I've done in the hoop bags before that have a lot of material, but the size and the shape, I just didn't feel like that was a good way to put it together. We're going to use a new feature in the software, and it's the mixed motif feature. I love this. It's so much fun. We're going to convert artwork. We've done this before. We're going to update the shape. We've done that before. We haven't done this. We're going to create artwork from a stitch segment, kind of the reverse. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to use a tool that's been in the software forever, and it's the show and hide feature. You can show and hide individual stitch segments, and we're going to use the ghost feature. And I don't know about you, but there's a little ghost icon in your software, and if you're like most of the people that I've talked to, the question is, what does that little ghost do? And by the end of today's lesson, you're going to know the answer to that question. I'm not going to go through the materials in great detail. Sometimes I do, but of course you need your software. You need to download the project. You want your handout. You need some fabric, and I used 3 fabrics. I had a main fabric, an accent fabric, and then a lining fabric. You need that nylon purse zipper, and there's 2 options when you construct your bag. You can incorporate the handle right into the bag. You can sew it into the seam, or, and I think this gives it a more professional look, get some purse hardware. You need D-rings and lobster clips, and I use the swivel lobster clips. So you need 2 D-rings and 2 lobster clips. And then I attached my handle with the D-rings, and as I said, it gives it a much more professional look. Your materials are listed over here. We'll go into those in a little more detail as we work through the lesson. You do need your needles. We'll need a couple of them. You need your embroidery needle. We also need a universal needle because we're going to do some straight sewing in here. Your Quilter Select ruler and rotary cutter, and I don't know if you've tried these yet, but once you try that rotary cutter and the Quilter Select rulers, you'll never use anything else. I love these. I've got lots of rulers, and I don't use anything but those. That acrylic ruler has a surface on it, and it does not flip. You need pre-wound bobbins if your machine takes them. And I'll talk a little bit more about these later in the webinar, but they're available in 2 sizes. Your turning tool and lots of other things, anything you've got, your Quilter Select wave applique rulers, all of those different things. So we won't go into that in much more detail. Couple of notes. This is a fairly complex project. It's not hard. It has a lot of steps. I'm going to try to keep this webinar right at under an hour, but I want to warn you ahead of time. I don't want to skip any steps. So I talk fast anyway, but I want to cover everything. I don't want to leave anything out. For those of you that are listening in, and if you have to leave, or maybe you're at a dealer and you have to cut the class short, remember that this webinar is recorded. And so within the next couple of days, the webinar will be posted on the myfloriani.club. So you can go back and watch the webinar. You can pause the webinar. You can rewind, and just a reminder of that. You want to make sure that you've got your dream weave and you fuse that to your fabric. So you've got your main fabric. Cut 2 strips of fabric before you get started, and this is for your handle, and this is for those tabs to hold the D-rings. You're going to cut 2 strips that are 4 inches by the width of the fabric. Put them aside, and then fuse your dream weave also to the remaining fabric. You will see this little stop sign several times. Measure the width of the zipper that you purchase for your purse before you start the project. And there's a reason for this, because when I made my first bag, I did a standard zipper size, and a purse zipper is not the same size as a standard zipper. So measure the width of your zipper. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to toggle over into my software. I've got a couple of things set up. If you've got your handout and you're following along, a couple of things right up front. Number 1, make sure that you go in and you check for updates. If you don't know what version of the software on, you click on About. The most recent version is this build 3322. So you want to be on that build so that you have the cool tools that we have that I'm going to showcase in this month's project. The second thing, you want to set up a couple of things in your preferences. So I go into my preferences. I'm going to come over to this view menu. On the view menu, by default, when you put in the software, when you download or put in an update, the show crosshair in input mode is by default checked. And what I found in working with clients and customers is that when we get ready to digitize in the software, if you have that crosshair on input mode showing, it's very distracting. And the first thing I have is, what is this thing on my screen? How much, so you might want to, not might, deselect show crosshair. The other thing, and I've gone over this many times, but is setting up your grid. And the way that I have my grid set up, I'm in inches, you'll see right here, and I put my spacing at horizontal and vertical 0.25. I'm going to put my grid major at 4 and 4. And let me just toggle my grid on so that you can see that, because what this gives me, this is a 1-inch square and this is a 1/4 of an inch, and we're really going to use those as we go through and create our project this month. Okay, let's get going on the back of the bag. To start with, we're going to start with a piece of artwork. So we're going to come up, we're going to click on our custom shapes tool. We're going to drop down and we're going to use the round box. These are alphabetized, so I'm scrolling down to the R's, and there is the round box. I'm going to click on that, and there is a round box. This is artwork. This is my shape that I'm going to work with. I like to work with the round box in making my little purses. And there's a reason for this. When I turn my purse or my bag right side out and I poke out the corners, if you create a traditional right angle box, these corners, no matter how much you try to poke those out, it's very difficult because of the bulk of the seam to get those nice and square. So why get frustrated with that? Just use the rounded corners. So in last month's project with the in-hoop bag, the little bag, we used the rounded corners. So I just wanted to point that out ahead of time. If you want to use a traditional rectangle, feel free. This is your project. The next thing we're going to do with our rectangle, I'm going to come over to my Properties tab and click on Transform. And I'm going to change the size of this. You need to go and look at your embroidery machine, and you need to find your largest hoop. And you need to look at the dimensions of your largest hoop, because as you create your project, that hoop size is going to limit the size of your bag if you're trying to do this all and maximize the hooping. If you're working with a machine with a smaller hoop, you can multi-hoop, you can decrease the size of the bag, or you can ask Santa Claus for a new embroidery machine. Haha, that's a joke. Let's change our size here. And I'll just demonstrate this real quickly. I'm going to go over, I'm going to show my hoop. And this is the largest hoop for my machine. And this is actually 360 millimeters by 260 millimeters. So I'm going to leave that up there for just a minute to see. And I determined that under my width, I'm going to make that 8.5. And under my height, I'm going to make that 11. And I'm going to click on Apply. So now you can see I really filled that space. I could make my bag even longer. So you can do this and you can make your bag even longer. I just felt like 8.5 by 11 was a nice size. When this bag is done, you can fit an iPad into this bag. You can fit small tablet computers into it. Any of your smaller electronic devices can go in this bag. So it really is a nice size, but if you wanted to make this longer, then you definitely could do that. So let me go ahead and turn that hoop back off. And so I've got my size right now. And notice that as I input the size, I have that maintain aspect ratio deselected. That's why I can put in my width and my height separately. We're going to go back to artwork, and I'm just going to real quickly come over here. I'm going to uncheck that box for fill and click on Apply. You don't have to do it, but that's just the way that I work in the software. Another option you have is that you can change the width of this artwork just by coming over here to your pen width and changing that there. 0 is the default in there, but if you made it larger, you could see it more. Okay, so we've got our shape, and now we're going to convert it to stitches. So with that selected, I come down to the lower left-hand corner to my Stitch Effects toolbar, and I'm going to left-click on Run, and I've now taken this and converted it to stitches. So I'm just going to expand this so that you can see right there, Run Stitch. We're going to copy this original box. So I'm going to come up, I'm going to use my copy tool right here, and I'm going to click on Copy. Now, you could use the Duplicate tool down here, but I didn't use that because when you duplicate it, it offsets it. And what we want to do is we want perfect alignment. So I copy, I'm going to click on Paste, and it's going to come in as the same color. And we're going to come down and we're going to click a color chip, and it doesn't make any difference what color. What you're doing is you're forcing your machine to do a stop. You're forcing a stop on your machine. So I've got color 1 as a run stitch, color 2 as a run stitch, and we're going to do this one more time. We're going to click Paste one more time, and we're going to click on a color chip. Okay. So what's going to happen when we get to our machine is the first color that stitches out right here is going to be a placement line. So we're going to stitch that onto a piece of stabilizer, and it can be nylon no-show mesh for the back. We stitch that down, and then we lay our fabric on there. We want to make sure that when we put our fabric and our batting onto our hoop, that we cover that placement line. This is the second stitch that's going to, the second color. So it's going to come around and it's going to tack everything down to your stabilizer. We're going to take the third stitch right here and we're going to create a really cool quilting motif. So with that selected, come down to your Stitch Effects toolbar and find your motif fill, and let's left click on that. And it's going to default to this particular motif fill, which is not exciting, but of course we're going to change that. So let's come over to our properties box. It's a motif fill. We're going to go to this drop down, and this is where you can really start to have fun. But the stitch that I use, I'm going to come up, and it's number 204. It's right here, and it's a nice weave in there. And I know it looks a little tight. I'm going to make more changes to it. We're going to now come in and we're going to click this, and this is why you need to do your software update. This is one of the newer features, and it's called a mixed pattern motif fill. Love it, love it, love it. So select that, and let's see what happens. Let's click on apply, and do you see what happens? It mixes in that motif pattern. So you've got two things going on, and so now I've just increased exponentially the kinds of motif fills that I can put into my embroidery design. Let's play some more. I'm going to drop down here, and the second motif that I use is actually F059. So I'm scrolling down now. I locate 059, and I'm going to go ahead and select that. Why did I choose that particular motif? Well, I wanted to just explain to you my reasoning. In the fabric I made my back out of, there's actually one of the fabrics has a geometric fill that looks just like that. So when I went to put my motif fill together, I thought, boy, that plays off the fabric really nicely. So as you go through and you're designing your project, I encourage you, use your fabric as inspiration, what you choose. The fabric speaks to you for what you're going to use. We're going to change the size. We're going to adjust the pattern size, and I like to, when I'm creating a quilting motif, I like it nice and open, and 15 is a nice open size. So you can experiment with smaller and larger, but I think 15 gives you a nice open size in there. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come right here to my stitch length. I'm going to adjust that, and I'm going to make that a 3 millimeter as opposed to 2 millimeter. I could even make that bigger, but when you get bigger, you start losing some of your right angles in your shapes there. So that's what I'm going to do with the back of my bag. This is all. I'm done with this file. So now I'm going to do a file. I'm going to do a save, and I have set up in my software the feature where when I save a design, I selected my machine format, and it's also going to, by default, save it in WAF format. So I would name this bag back, and click on save. And it's going to tell me it's already there, because of course it is, and I'll replace that. So that's you're going to use this file for the first hooping and the second hooping. Okay. Now, I'm going to my handout, and we're ready to start our second file. So this is really only 2 files. The next one is the one that there's more steps to it. So let's go ahead and open up a new piece of paper, and we're going to once again start with that rounded rectangle. Now, you could come up here to your custom shape, and you could click on that, and you could scroll down, and you could find that rounded rectangle, and you could bring it in, and you could resize it. That's a lot of clicks right there. Let me show you an easier method. I want to show you some shortcuts in this lesson. Instead of bringing in the artwork, when we did the copy and paste, do you see how my paste icon is still highlighted there? If I click on my paste icon, it's going to paste the exact shape rectangle that I used in the back side of my bag. So that's much faster. And that will stay in the memory of your computer until you A, close down your software, or B, copy or cut something else. and then that overrides what's in your memory. But that will stay in the memory, so if I open up another document, if I click on paste, it's still there. So just a little tip and trick to kind of save you some time. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to come in, and we're going to use our grid now. This is when the grid becomes really important. And as we're creating the bag, the first thing that's going to stitch down is this placement line. And then we're going to stitch our zipper placement line. And I determined, in order to get a nice size flap at the top of the bag, if I drop down 1.5 inches from the top of the bag, that's where the top of my zipper needs to go. We're going to use our Run Stitch tool. We're going to left click on it. I'm using my grid, and because I've set it at 0.25, which is a 1/4 inch and an inch, all I need to do is use those grid markings in the background. There's a 1/2 inch, there's an inch, and right here where I'm going to start my zipper. So I'm going to left click on the left hand side. I'm going to move to the right hand side, and I'm using that grid line as my guide. I'm going to bring it over to the right hand side, and as long as it intersects right there, I'm good. I'm going to left click again and right click to finish. Now I'm going to turn it on 3D, and as you are working on this, it's real important that you pay attention to the directionality of how you digitize this, because it does make a difference. When this goes to stitch out, this is going to be the starting point, this is the stopping point. So when I stitch the bottom line for my zipper, just to save wear and tear on my machine, I'm not going to come over and do from the left to the right. I'm going to just drop down, and I'm going to go from right over to left. My zipper, when I measured that purse zipper, is 1 1/4 inch. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. And I'm going to force a color stop. So let me grab this stitch, and let me real quickly change the color. And now I'm going to bring in at 1 1/4 inches the bottom line of my zipper. I'm going to left click, right click, and there you go. So this is going to be my zipper placement line. This stitch is first. That gives me my shape of my bag. This is my zipper placement line. As soon as this stitches out, and when we look at the construction of the project, I keep the stabilizer in the hoop. I pull the hoop off of the machine. I'm going to lay my zipper down between these two lines. I'm going to tape it in place. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to digitize, we're going to create a stitch to tack down that zipper. So it's going to go 1/4 inch underneath and above these two existing stitches. Let's change the color. I'm going to go back, grab my run stitch. I'm coming down 1/4 inch. I'm going to left click, move over, left click, right click to finish. I'm going to drop down 1/8 inch. I'm sorry, I probably said that wrong, and I know there's people out there going, no, she's not right. Right click. Okay, so what's going to happen is that I'm going to move my hoop back into the machine with that zipper taped in place. And you'll have to excuse me, but sometimes I am a little tad bit neurotic, and what I see is that I've got, this is a little out of alignment, so I got to fix that. Oh, that's really not good. Okay, but anyway, so it's going to, this is going to tack down the top of the zipper, and this will tack down the bottom of the zipper. And the only function of these two stitches that we put in there is this first is just defining where you're going to place the zipper, and then this is going to hold the zipper in place. And as we add our fabric and do our quilting, that the zipper is not going to shift on top of the stabilizer. Okay, so all right, so we've got that. And if you're following along in your handout, the next thing that we want to do is we're going to add the motif stitching on the top of this bag right here. We're going to add that motif stitching in there. So as we build the project, and I know it's kind of hard as we look at what we're doing here. I'm trying to articulate what's going to happen when you're building this project in your machine, especially if you've never done this. But you have to think abstractly. So as we're building our project, once this stitches down and pulling our zipper, we're now going to put a piece of fabric over this area right here, and it's going to butt up against the zipper teeth. Imagine the zipper teeth are right here. It's going to butt up against that, and then we're going to quilt it down. Okay. So I'm going to come up and use a rectangle, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to cover right down to the top of the zipper, right here. And that is going to be my area for quilting. Let's change the color. So I'm expanding that. Let me just click a different color. And as I said, it doesn't make any difference what color you are clicking on or that you're selecting. The whole purpose of changing the color is that you're forcing the machine to stop so that you can do something at the machine. You can add a piece of fabric. You can, you do some kind of a task at the machine. Let's go ahead and let's fill this with our motif fill. So we're going to click on this, and we're going to once again define that 204, and we're going to do it in mixed pattern, and we're going to come down here and find F059, and you're probably thinking right about now, isn't there an easier way to do this? Yes, there is. And let me demonstrate that one to you right now. We're going to create what's called a preset. So you're going to come in. You're going to make sure that you have everything here set the way you want it. We're going to drop down to that motif fill, which is right here. That little arrow right next to it is where you get to create presets. So we're going to select that preset. We're going to do a save preset, and then you're going to give it a name. And I would come in and go motif 204 plus, and I'm just naming it here so that when I go back and I use this again, then I know what it is. And I'll go 15 millimeter, and then I'm going to say okay. Okay, so my my motif preset, excuse me, is saved. Let's see how we're going to use that to streamline our workflow. Let's zoom out a little bit here and get everything centered up. I just clicked on the zoom to fit. Now we need to add the quilting to the bottom of the bag. So once again, I'm going to select my rectangle. I'm going to come in, drag down to create that rectangle. Okay, let's change the color too. I don't know if I've done that yet. And now, when we go to add our motif fill, we're going to click that arrow. We're going to select the motif that we created, which was this one. And voila, we just saved all the time of inputting those individual items up here in the bar. So that's a preset, and you can create those not just for the tools down here, but if you'll notice, you also can create presets for your tools up here. So it's just your favorites. It's just a way to streamline the workflow process. Okay, this is looking good. The next thing that we need to do is we're going to add some decorative stitching right here and right here. So when our bag gets constructed, the quilting will go here, and here's our zipper, and there's fabric covering there. As I said, think abstractly. And I'm going to just add a little decorative stitch right here by the zipper to make it stand out. So let's go back, and we want to make sure that we get the color of the stitch right here. That is the zipper tack down. We're going to copy that. We're going to paste it now. And you don't really need to change the color because by default, it's going to be the last item in your sequence view window. And now we're going to come down and we're going to turn that into a motif fill. And with my motif fill, I want to match it to the motif fill that I used before, which was 059. And it is right here. And I'm going to click on apply. Okay. Now, this motif fill right here, if I wanted to make any changes to the pattern size, maybe make it a 5, maybe change the length, maybe change the run spacing, while that's selected, guess what? This also has that little drop-down arrow next to it, and so you can come in when you have just that selected. Let me make sure I grab it. And I could save that motif fill with those defined preferences in there, those defined changes, also as a preset. So that's just a little feature, you know, take advantage of it. Okay, so we've got our motif fill in there. Everything's looking good. Now, what we're going to do now, let me go up to the top here, and I'm going to collapse everything. And this is where we're going to use the show hide, because the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add our free design to the center of our bag, and we're going to create a band where we're going to add our fabric. And I'm going to come over right here to the picture of what we're going to do just to kind of illustrate it. So this is the front of the bag in the hoop. And you can see right here, here's my zipper, my fabric going up to it. There's a decorative stitch over the top here. And this is what we're going to be working on right now. So we want to create a placement line for the applique fabric. And this is where we're going to put that flower. The flower is going to go in the center of it. Okay, let me go back to my bag. So let's ghost. So I'm clicking the eyeball right next to that stitch segment, and I'm going to click the eyeball. And do you see now, I can't see those. They're still there, but I can't see them anymore. And when we talk about using the ghost, I can come over here, and when I click on that ghost, what happens is now I can see those in the background. They're very light. I don't have to worry about selecting them. There's no way I can select those items until I unhide them over here. So once I come over here, and I can unhide everything at the same time, hide it, unhide everything. So once I come over here and unhide that, then I can come back and select it. So that's what this little tool and those little eyeballs will do for you. Okay, so now that we've got that ghosted, let's go ahead and let's add this month's free design. I'm going to click on my library panel. I'm going to navigate in my library panel to Free FTCU Project to November of 2017. Make sure on the library panel that you have that selected. Then you're going to come over to your design panel, and here's your free design. We're going to left click, we're going to drag it, and you're going to drop it into your bag wherever you want it to go. And it's up to you. It doesn't make any difference. Up, down, around, however you want that. But I thought, I'm kind of a type A, linear, sequential kind of person, so I thought that my flower needed to go in the center of my bag. So I'm going to, right now, center it so that I know that it's in the center of the bag. And then I've got that selected, and I've got my control key down with my arrows. I'm just going to nudge it down a little bit. All right, now I need to have a fabric strip that's going to be underneath this flower. And the whole purpose of that is just to add some class to the bag. It makes it look not homemade, it makes it look designer-like. So it really adds a wonderful design element to it. And I've given you this flower, but I just wanted to share this with you. We have this tool right here called You Design It. And one of the You Design It tools is called Circle Monogram. And I went ahead and put one together just to kind of demonstrate this for you. But in the Circle Monogram tool, it's exactly what it is. So you bring in a circle, and then you bring in monogramming letters. So that's this tool right here. You do have to purchase the circle monograms from your Floriani dealer if you haven't done so. But they're right here. There are a lot of fun things, and I'm just thinking the circle monograms are perfect to put in this bag. And I love to monogram anything I make, and those of you that have been doing this know that. And my husband actually, he says, Kathy, with all of these things that you're making, you shouldn't put your initials on them because then you could sell them when you get done. And I'm thinking, well, if I sell it, then it becomes a job, and I don't want to do that. So, but anyway, I love to monogram things. And when I put this project together, I really wanted to put a monogram in the center of the project, but there's no way I could do that because you would not have access to the letters that fit in there perfectly. So I just want to share that with you. Go get that circle monogram, you design it, and monogram these bags as you create them. But we're going to work with the flower because I love the flower too. Now, you can do two things with these flowers. I'm just going to use this flower as an embroidery design, but you could also, if you didn't want to, embroider this flower separately, embroider it onto a piece of fabric, and then cut it out so that you have a 3D flower. And then you could just, you could pin it on, you could glue it on, you could swap it out based on, you can make multiples in different colors, you could swap it out based on the color of the outfit that you're wearing. You can do a lot of different things with these flowers. But what we're going to do is we're going to incorporate it into the bag. So we need to create that little straight strip with an arc. And I did this several ways, and I found that I needed a cheater. I could not accurately create a circle around the outside of this without some kind of line to trace with. So I came up to my artwork. I grabbed me this tool, the circle. I'm going to hold my control key down. I came down, and I actually created a circle. Oh, and I've got it in there. Let me undo that. And it's in yellow right now, so let's select that circle real quickly, and let's make it black so that we can see it. And I'm just going to move that up. And let's just resize it a little bit, and let's center that also. So let's drop it down so that's right around the flower. And I'm using my grid just to kind of make sure that I have it equally spaced around the top of the flower and the bottom of the flower. Okay. All right, now to create that band that goes around there, we're going to use our run stitch again. We're going to come over, and I determined that it would look really nice if that band was about 1.5 inches in width. So I'm going to just zoom in to see where I need to start. Let me go back and grab my tool again. So here's the center of that flower. And if I go up, I'm going to do one here and one here. Okay, so let me left click. I'm going to drag over to the circle. Now this is just artwork, and the only purpose for that circle being there is so that I can trace my circle over the top and have a real nice clean arc. I'm going to move my cursor up just a bit. I'm going to left click again while the tool is still active, and now I'm going to engage my control key so as I continue around the circle, I get this nice, beautiful curve. And then I'm going to repeat that process. So I release my control key. I'm going to drop down, and then I'm going to angle right there, and right click to finish. So now I've got a real nice, clean shape that goes around there. I could digitize the bottom, but that's too much work. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a copy. I'm going to do a paste. I'm going to flip it vertical, and then I'm going to grab it and move it down. And I'll just use my nudge tool to get it in the exact, precise space. I'm all about shortcuts. Okay. I'm done with that circle, so I'm just going to actually grab it and press delete to get rid of it because I'm done with it. So now what's going to happen is that this is going to stitch a placement line that I'm going to add my fabric to. So I can do traditional applique in the hoop where I do the placement line, lay a piece of fabric down, trim this out, and then do a finishing stitch over the top. Or what if you want to print the design onto a piece of applique wonder? Or better yet, what if you have a digital cutting machine? Let's look at how we would make a cut file for this. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab that shape, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to open up a new document, and I'm going to paste it here. And this is where we're going to use this tool right here. And what this tool does is it takes a stitch outline element and converts it back into artwork. So as I left click on that, I've now turned this into artwork, which can be cut on a digital cutting machine. And if you notice over here in my sequence view window, there I go, artwork, artwork. I do need to connect these. So I'm going to come up now, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to turn on snap to anchors so that I get some snapping going on with my tool. And we're going to grab our line tool. We're going to come in and see now how I've got my anchors. And I'm going to left click down, right click to finish, left click down, right click to finish. Okay, that's done. But currently, this is 4 pieces of artwork. And before we export this for our digital cutting machine, we need to turn this into 1 piece of artwork. Select all of the items, come up, and this tool right here is called the Combine tool. You're going to click on that, and now this is 1 item. So if you have a digital cutting machine, you're at this point going to come in, you're going to go File, you're going to do an Export Artwork. You're going to take that and export it either as an SVG file or an FCM file based on the machine that you use. If you don't have a digital cutting machine, this can still be a benefit to you. You can print this now onto Applique Wonder. You can run it through the printer, and then when you print it onto the Applique Wonder, you fuse this onto your piece of fabric, you cut right here on the lines, and you pre-cut it. And the benefit of pre-cutting that is you've got your Applique Wonder on the back, so you lay this down onto your fabric, you're going to fuse it in place. It's not going to shift, it's not going to jar, and the beauty is that this is applique, and you're going to have a raw edge here, and it will not fray because you have fused that in place. If I were going to print it, I could just come down in here, I could go, and I'm going to do a print preview first, and it's going to come in. And if you come into this print preview and you don't see anything, and you have to go in under your print settings and make sure that artwork mode is selected. Because if I turn that off, I can't see the artwork. So I'll come back in and show you that that's artwork. And so you've got to have that artwork mode turned on in order to be able to have that print onto your materials for you. And I might even come in and go print that on 1 page, print actual size, and I may have to also, I'm trying to get this on 1 piece of paper, so I might try putting that in landscape to see what happens. And not going to fit. A little bit, just a little bit too big. So I'm going to have to print it on 2 pieces of Applique Wonder and tape it together, but that'll work too. Okay, so that's how you can create an applique shape from a design. So you can bring it in, turn it into artwork around the outside of that, and then it's good to go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm back in my flower design here. And the next thing we're going to do is that, so this is a running stitch, and then we would lay our fabric down on top. If you're going to do applique the old-fashioned way, where you're going to lay a piece of fabric down and cut around it, you need to select this and copy it, and let's just the color, and we're going to paste it. So now I've got 1 set of running stitches here that would be my placement line. This would be my tack down line. I'd lay my fabric down, and then I'd cut along the edge here, okay? If you don't do that, if you're going to pre-cut your fabric, then you don't necessarily have to have this running stitch there. I think when I created the master file, I think I left it in there. But we want to do a decorative motif around the outside here. So we're going to, let me just go ahead and paste another one and change the color. And then we're going to turn that, I'm coming down into my motif area, and I'm going to turn that into a motif stitch. I'm going to come up, I'm going to find my design, and they don't have to match, but I said earlier that I'm very linear sequential, and so everything has to be perfectly balanced and match on both sides. And so let's go ahead and click on that and turn that into a run motif so it matches the top of your bag. Now, are we done? And that is a question so that you can analyze this. When you design in the software, this is really important. Use your slow redraw or your simulate sewing, because there's a problem with this design. And I know there's some of you that have worked on this project or something like this, and you're like, whoa, 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 Kathy, you're not done yet. And I'm not. And I'll real quickly go through this, and I'll just show you what the problem is. The problem is with my flower. So my flower needs to stitch on top of the fabric that I put down. But if you remember, as I was creating this design, I brought my flower in so that I could create that applique around it. So I need to change the order. And that's a very simple process. All I need to do is grab my flower right here. I'm going to grab both of those. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go move last. All right. Now I'll just kind of real quickly go back and scan through this again. And I'm just going to drag through. And you'll notice there's my applique. And that's going to finish it out. And so now that's pretty much done. So I know that there are a lot of steps, and we've covered a lot of different things in there. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've learned about that ghosting feature in here. So let me go ahead and unghost everything so that we can see that. So we learned about the show hide. We learned about the the ability to ghost something in there after you show hide it. And this is a really fun project to do. And I think one of the things I want to emphasize, and this was even with the October project, once you get down the foundation of everything that you've got in here and you have your master file, it's really easy to come in and modify things. So let's say I wanted to do one with monogram in the center. I could come into my master file, I could come down, I could remove the flower, I could insert a different design, or I could insert a monogram, or I could do anything else that I wanted with it. Or maybe I just want to have a plain bag and I don't even want to have that fabric strip across the front. I could just come into my master design and remove it. The other thing is that I like the quilting down here on the bottom of the bag, but we're going to use a tearaway stabilizer for this. And think about it. When you do the tearaway stabilizer, you have to come in and you have to tear it away behind all of these little open areas. And so it takes more time. In the first bag that I made, I think I quilted the top, but I didn't quilt the bottom. So the stabilizer teared away just real nice and clean, and it was very, very fast. When I made the second bag and I quilted it, I had to spend a little bit of time in front of the television taking the stabilizer away. So I'll just warn you about that up front. And as we talk about the construction of project, we'll talk about some other things in there. So you would export that design and you would get it ready to stitch out. Okay, I know we're running out of time here. I just had a glance at my watch. So let me see if I can finish this up quickly. All right, as far as constructing the bag goes, just a quick review, and if you're new to the FTCU software or watching this, you have a handout. And it's a PDF file. You're going to find that file in your C drive, Floriani, Design, Pre-FTCU November of 2017. You're going to use Windows Explorer to drill down to that November 2017 folder. You're going to find this handout. You're going to print it. I also included in there design splitting, because you have a feature in your software, and we haven't used it, but you can bring a design and you can split it, and it's a wizard, and you pick the hoop, and your design is there, and it splits it up, and you would do multiple hoopings with that. So if you need to do that, then you can go ahead and you can print that off, and it walks you through the steps of how to do it. So you want to make sure that you print your handout. Real quickly, Dreamweave Ultra to prepare your fabric. I always use this. You will achieve better results. It's worth the investment in your project. As far as your stabilizers, for the back of the bag and the pocket, we're going to use nylon no-show mesh. We're going to use Heat and Stay for the front of the bag. And I use the Heat and Stay light fusible fleece. I love this fleece. It's very, very soft. It gives your bag a real nice, really nice texture. So it adds body, but not too much. I want to say a word about Floriani Stitch and Wash, and I found this to be a teachable moment. I actually saw a post on the Facebook Floriani group this week, and they said, I used Stitch and Wash, but it didn't wash away. And as a review, Stitch and Wash is a tear away stabilizer. It's very unique in that half of the fibers in the stabilizer are soluble, meaning that they wash away, and half of the fibers are non-soluble. I, by mistake, grabbed Stitch and Wash to do my bag. And so this is an actual picture of my bag, and I went and I sat and I got it wet, and this is intentional. You want to leave those fibers behind because it keeps your embroidery looking smooth. But I ended up putting a lining in my bag. So just a little note about Stitch and Wash so that people understand that. The Quilter Select bobbins, they're an 80 weight thread. They come in 40 colors, and these 40 colors match our embroidery thread. So think freestanding lace. You can do a color, an embroidery color on top, and you can put your bobbin on the bottom, the 80 weight, and you've got twice as much thread on that bobbin as a 40 weight. They come in class 15 and L. So, and I just recently got a machine that used these. Love them. Okay, quick glance just to review our bag. In this bag right here, I did create tabs with a D-ring. The handle has a lobster clasp on the outside, and now you can see these nicely rounded corners in there. And we'll talk real quickly about how I created this band on the back. This is the back of the bag, this is the pocket, and this is binding, but it's not faux binding. I call it faux binding. Okay, so the back of the bag is fairly simple. You're going to hoop your nylon no-show mesh. You want to think about bobbin color when you're doing this because you're quilting, and so you want to match your bobbin color to your fabric. So this is the back of my fabric, this is the front of my fabric. You always want to start with a new needle, and I change my needle very regularly. Number two, when you're, still on the first hooping, back of the bag, do your placement. Remove the hoop. Leave the batting leave the stabilizer in the hoop. You're going to tape your lining fabric on the back of the hoop. Flip it over, lay your batting and fabric on the front of the hoop. Take the hoop, put it back in your machine, and stitch the second color, which is a tack down. Then, before you start doing the third color, which is the quilting in there, check to make sure, just lift your hoop up or pull the hoop out and make sure that the tape held and none of the fabric folded over, because it's much easier to tear out a running stitch than it is to tear out the quilting motif when you get started. If it looks good, do the quilting motif, it's finished, remove it, set it aside. As far as the second hooping goes, you're going to make fabric for the pocket. Do the same thing, only you do not need to put the fabric on the back of the hoop because we're going to line the pocket with a different piece of material. So you don't need to do that. So stitch that out, remove the fabric, set it aside. The front of the bag, I'll walk you through these steps. Color number 1 and 2, outside of bag, zipper placement. Once that's there, remove the hoop. I actually put Quilter Select glue underneath here to hold the zipper in place, and then I tape it in place. Take it back to the machine and stitch that zipper tack down right here. And it's going to hold your zipper in place because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to add your fabric and do the quilting. So this is the top piece of fabric. And when you cut your fabric, it's a piece of batting, and the batting, I think, is 2 inches. The dimensions are in the handout, but I think the batting was 2 inches by 9 inches, and the fabric is double that. So it was 4 inches by 9 inches. Take your fabric, fold it in half, press it, starch it and press it, add your batting into the middle of that and press it again. When you lay that fabric that has the batting in it on the hoop, put the fused batting side facing up. I hope that makes sense. But you want to put the side of the fabric that has the batting fused to it on the top. You get a nicer finish, just so you know. So you'll do your top fabric in quilted, you'll do your bottom fabric in quilted. And then this is that decorative stitching over the zipper. The next thing you're going to do, this is the applique placement, and you'll add the flower on top of that. For the construction phase, you're going to have to construct your handles and those tabs for the D-rings. And with the handles, I've got a 4-inch piece of fabric by the width of the fabric. So I think this fabric was 40 inches. I'm going to fold the fabric in half, and I pressed it. And once again, starch it really well, press it. So I pressed it in half, and then I folded it in on itself and pressed it in on 4. I cut a piece of batting for my handle that was 2 inches wide. I folded it back in on itself, pressed it in place, folded it in half, and then just did a top stitch around the edge. Set that aside, add my lobster clip. There's the top of my bag. And then for your tabs, you're going to do the same thing with that second piece of fabric, only you'll need to cut those. So you'll add your D-rings in there, you'll wrap that piece of fabric around the D-rings, and then you want to stitch it in place. And I like to do an X stitch. And I think it's real important to pay close attention to those tabs that hold in the handles, because that's going to be your stress point. So you want to really make sure that you're reinforcing this well. As far as the back fabric goes, I cut the top of the fabric so that it was really nice and straight. Then I added, put right sides together with my lining fabric right here. This is a 1/2 inch seam. Stitch 1/2 inch, fold it over, and press it in place. So that's what gives you this look of a binding, and it also adds in here the lining to your pocket. So this is something that I learned in another bag that I did, and then you can't see it, but I even went back through here, and right here in the ditch of the seam, I top stitched. If you wanted to use a plain fabric and add a decorative stitch on your machine for something different, you could even do that. So you have a lot of different options. When you put the bag together, this is just a couple of different little tips and tricks. Tack the purse straps. That means I laid them on the fabric and stitched them in place on the seam. Tack the purse straps to the front of the bag, and notice they're facing down towards the zipper. Also notice I have my zipper open at this point. I have it open, and this is real important when you put your bag together. You've got to have that zipper open because you flip your bag through the zipper opening. Once my tabs were tacked in place, I taped them down. I taped them towards the center of the bag. I wrapped Floriani embroidery protection tape down, and I taped them down. You don't want to hit one of these D-rings with your sewing machine needle as you're putting this bag together. So taping them down will really hold them in place. Okay, when you put your bag together, so I put everything together, sandwiched it together, so, you know, my bag, my flap in the back, and then my lining, and then the top of the bag, and then I sewed around the seam. Once I got the seam sewn around, I actually flipped it right side out to make sure that I put it together correctly. When I did the first bag, I put the, when I was putting the pocket on the back of the bag, I put the lining facing out. So I got done, I turned my bag right side out, and lo and behold, it's the lining that's showing, not the outside. So I had to rip it apart and put it back together. So now what I do is I just stitched around the outside one time. I turned it right side out just so that I could check on everything and make sure it was lined up and everything was tucked in place. Then I turned it back right side out, stitched it again. I cut it 1/4 inch from the seam where I stitched it. And I just wanted to show you this. This is your open toe presser foot, and I think most machines have these now. And what I do is I took my needle and moved it over to the left on the inside of that open toe foot. This is a overcast stitch in there, and I set it up so that it was 1/4 of an inch, and then I finished the inside of my bag. You could finish this on a serger if you have one, but a lot of us don't have sergers. So this is, you notice, is a serger stitch, and the way that I do that is that right here's my needle, and there's that inside of that open toe foot, and so as I was stitching this along, all I had to do was line up the inside of that foot with that seam right there, and then it would stitch over the top, and I have this beautiful finish on the inside of the bag. And I like a nice finish on the inside of my bag. When you get done, make sure that you share this. We have a Facebook group. It's Floriani Embroidery. If you post it on Instagram, or you can put me at Casey Ferrel on Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat if you're on there. Some ideas for hashtags. Remember, these are our identifiers. Is November Project, Floriani Embroidery, In the Hoop, and this is my new one, I Love Embroidery. I hope you do too. If you have any questions, please email me. I always provide my email. I am Kathy F. at rnkdistributing.com, and I usually answer that email either the same day or within 24 hours. And I'm just going to put this out there, spoiler alert, next month, I'm excited for this one. We're going to do a snow globe pillow project. Spoiler alert. And with that, I want to wish you a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'll see you back here next month. DJ, are you there? 3 minutes over.
I am here. Sorry. I had to unmute myself. Thank you very much, Kathy. That was a wonderful project. You did a great job presenting it. And as always, you do a great job with those projects. And we look forward to seeing everyone next time, and hope you all enjoyed it. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, DJ.
Thanks, Kathy.